Hey, what's up everybody? This is Rick501 and today I'm going to go over some new Atlas information screenshots that we've gotten. Now, we're only a few hours away from release, so this is going to be one of my last videos that's like not centered around from in-game stuff that we already know. But we're going over a few screenshots and a pretty big article that gives us a bunch of new information. That's an interview with one of the developers. Now, the first two things we're going over are these two images. And the first one is facing down a group of soldiers of the damned. A skilled warrior wields a powered up two-handed mace for maximum attack damage. Now this tells us a bunch of stuff. Now this is the two-handed mace that looks exactly like the one that was in one of the pictures in the PC Gamer UK article that was in the background. Some people couldn't even see it, but it looks exactly like that. And it's powered up, so it does have basically an enchant on it. From everything we can see, this is going to be like a permanent enchant because it has an animation around it. It's powered up. So that seems pretty cool. That pretty much tells us that we are going to be able to have enchants, like how these dudes all have pink on their weapons. There was another sword, a little picture of a sword that was barely on screen in one of the other screenshots that showed like a fiery weapon. Now, it also does, I can't tell what this dude behind him has. It looks like another player behind them. It's either a shovel, I don't know what would have that, basically like a cross at the bottom of it. But basically, we've seen shields before, so these dudes are using shields. These dudes look really crazy. They're the Army of the Damned. There's this house out here. This looks to be a player-made house, which looks a lot more like an actual building than Ark buildings do, because Ark buildings are just usually squares or maybe with some other stuff on it, but nothing like this with windows, a nice-looking door that fits in with everything, an actual sloped house with a chimney. This does look like it could be a player-made house, which is pretty nice. Definitely looks a lot better than a lot of the Ark building stuff. So the second image is a high desert Freeport bustles with activity midday, with adventurers from all over Atlas meeting to buy and sell goods, trade exotic items, recruit for forthcoming voyages, and tell grand stories of their legendary exploits. So this is a Freeport in the desert, which also tells you that Freeports are going to be all over the map because there will be desert maps, and other Freeports that we've seen have been more in maybe midland areas or stuff like that, with bushes and trees and type of stuff like that. So there will be Freeports probably all over the map in different regions of the map. Now we do see a few different things here. We've seen bait signs and stuff like that before. We do see what looks to be a boar right here with someone riding with a saddle. Now the saddle also does look like it has materials on the back, so I'm wondering if that's just cosmetic, aesthetic stuff, or if that's actually stuff you can put on the back. Now it looks like there's monkeys right here. I actually can't tell what these are. There's also a parrot right over here. Pretty much, maybe it's a different type of bird, but it does kind of look like a parrot that we've seen before. We do also have this big bird thing right here. I don't actually know what this is. Maybe I actually have no idea. I can't tell. This might be the same thing this is, which I guess would be a big ostrich. But its feathers look much bigger than this one right here, but it does have feathers sticking out the back, so I don't 100% know if they're the same thing or not. And this does look like they have a saddle too, so that's standard animal. Now we do also see a giraffe in the background with the saddle with some more stuff on it. So it does look like you're able to put stuff on saddles. Either it shows like materials you have stored on them, or you have like containers you can store more stuff in, or something like that. We do see these bigger stone walls, which look kind of cool. They don't seem to be the exact same like stone stuff from Ark, but they do seem to be decent sized stone walls, which is nice since Ark basically just the small stone walls, or what look like to be just those stone walls connected together. We do also have cactus and different stuff like that you'd expect from being in the desert. That's pretty much it from this image, and that's pretty much all we have for the images. Now we have the big piece of the video. So this is going to be a long video. If you don't want to watch it all, I'll just put a link in the description and probably a comment to this article if you want to read it yourself. Now this is an interview with Jeremy Steglitz. I'm pretty sure that's actually how you pronounce it. I had no idea to pronounce that before. I'm pretty sure it's Steglitz. So there's a pirate MMO. This first part is just explaining the game. We've explained the game through everything else we've read. I spoke to project director / lead programmer Jeremy Staglitz and creative director Jesse Rapkazak. Don't know how to pronounce it either. Over Skype, we chatted about singing to stay off boredom on voyages, player politicking. Is that even spelled right? Oh well. Ship combat is a team sports game and a plan to save every player before they die of old age. So you're making a pirate MMO. Why will it be better than Sea of Thieves? Laughs. How will it not be better than Sea of Thieves? Is the more accurate question. I'm sorry, that's not the answer, just kidding. So first off, I want to say, having played Sea of Thieves, I really enjoy the mechanics that it has. Ultimately, Atlas is a huge open world MMO game, while Sea of Thieves is more of an instant session-based action game. So with Atlas, we really tried to take a global look. Okay, so reading this, a bunch of this stuff is kind of just... I'm going to try to skip through some of the stuff so the video is not as long, because some of it's just filler stuff that we already kind of know. We tried the best of our ability to make an early access game one to represent every aspect of the area in a fantasy setting. When I say every aspect, I mean things like fort building, creature taming, and transportation, exotic resource transportation, trade, merchant ships, trade routes, territory claiming, taxation, crew hiring, mutinies, and you know, the full gambit of fantasy crap too, ghost ships and demons and stuff, treasure maps, spears of influence, player versus player conflicts on a large scale. So some of this stuff, we did know a good chunk of this stuff, but having some of it set out like this just seems like it's going to be much more of an expansive game than maybe even a lot of people thought it would be. And a bunch of the stuff we don't know exactly how it's going to work. So a lot of this stuff is basically up for theorizing how it's going to work. I mean, we are only like 3 hours away from the game actually being released. But our design mantra is, and we're not there yet, but it's if you think you can do it in this era, we want you to be able to. That includes executing people with a guillotine or a noose or a gibbet. I don't know why that randomly came to mind, but it did. Atlas also has a very deep melee combat system. You can do things like execute parries and stunning attacks, do different strength attacks and dodges, and there's directional attack and blocking. It's not Ark's melee combat system, that's for sure. If someone's looking for something that a game will give them the full experience of everything they could ever want and do in that setting, we hope ultimately that Atlas will be that game. The Star Citizen of the Sea, that's the tagline. I know there are some safe zones, but can anyone attack anyone outside of those? Will players have a fighting chance against pirates with bigger boats? So it's at least a marginal improvement over Ark in the sense that there are starter zones that are PvE only. You cannot harm anybody else there. You can't even build anything permanent there. So I'm assuming when they mean anything permanent there, they mean like you can build like cooking fires and stuff like that, but no actual building pieces, like maybe some crafting stations on the ground or stuff like that. You can't even build anything permanent there, so not only can you not harm people, you can't build a box that traps people or something. How we prevent players from getting steamrolled once they leave those ports is a thornier question. The best thing I can say about it is that these ports aren't just a tiny island, they're actually a very substantial chunk of real estate on the map. So in order to intercept low-level players who are leaving these areas, you have to blockade a very wide swath of territory because the ocean is vast. So this does tell us a little bit more about the Freeport, so they're going to be a much bigger part of the map than we thought. Or at least, I'm assuming that they're going to be like a big islands or a big chunk with multiple places on the map as these big chunks, which is very good. Now these free ports are probably going to be filled with like NPCs, like vendors, different stuff like that, so it's not just going to be some like empty area with like a dock and a few NPCs and then all the noobs are going to spawn there. It's most likely going to be a big area, towns, maybe cities or stuff like that. So it's not just going to be some, you know, open land area or something. I think the griefing satisfaction would be outweighed by the sheer manpower required to do so. So this basically just talks about, you know, griefing and how they're trying to stop it from these starter areas. We do not have arbitrary rules in Atlas with a few exceptions, but if that became an issue, we might have to make that dangerous in certain ways. We, for example, have the ability to trigger hurricanes. They push players out of those regions, and that system was actually designed for when players for when the areas become overcrowded. So if it starts to run poorly, a hurricane is triggered that moves players to the side. That's how we can handle so many players. We thought what happens when all 40,000 people try to cram into one corner of the map. We've got to have something to deal with that. So basically they're saying they can trigger a hurricane, or hurricanes will automatically trigger when too many people go in certain areas, as a mechanism to try to get players to leave. Because if it's a massive hurricane, your boat's probably going to get destroyed or really badly damaged. You might die. So it's actually a pretty good way, and a pretty cool way if the hurricanes are actually a pretty good game feature to move players out of a super crammed area. That's cool. I can imagine you sitting over a table like in Game of Thrones, launching different threats at your players. So that's where we ultimately want to go with it. We're certainly not there day one. Day one is fairly simple. You can form what's called a company, effectively a government, and you can invite people into that and set up authority levels for who can do what, who can claim your territory, set taxation rates, access various structures, and invite new people. So kind of the basic clan or guild like authority system with officers, type of stuff like that. You could tax territory that you own. So in those regions, if other players earn resources, a portion of those automatically granted to your bank. Hopefully there's an incentive for players not to only play competitively but cooperatively, even with people they don't know. So like, I'll protect you if you play in my territory, but you have to accept my 50% taxation rate. Then maybe some upstart says, no, I'm gonna go with the 20% tax rate, come here. We hope that players will feel the benefit from being feudal lords and having serfs, and not just trying to murder everyone they see, which is very good. There's actually been a lot of talk about this in the Discord, that solo players will probably have a place to be protected in this game because they can just play on a big company's land, gather there, build there, and stuff like that. And since the big company is getting percentages of their resources and they're getting taxed, the company has a very large incentive to protect those people that are building and gathering there. Everything I just described we have at launch. What we intend to have early next year is a system for players to define laws in their territory, but interestingly we're not going to have breaking those laws result in some lightning bolt from the sky that instantly kills you. Rather, breaking those laws on the territory will brand you an outlaw in that territory. The consequences for that can be specific by the territory owner, which is very good as well. So if there's a big company with, say, maybe a big company has a really big swath of land and they let a bunch of different like solo or smaller companies build there, if someone just goes around raiding other people, you could set rules so that if you do that, you now get branded as an outlaw, and then the big company or the other small companies and players can decide what to do with you, basically. You mentioned sailing in real time across vast oceans. What kind of voyages can we be expecting? Will it take hours to get anywhere? It definitely will take hours. You calculated at one time, Jeremy. How long do you think it will take to sail across the map? Didn't we say like 30 hours or something? If you're sailing in a straight line without any stops or detours, it will take you about 30 hours to sail across the world map. And that's also if wind is in your favor. That is ridiculous. So if you're sailing across the entire map, 30 hours, if wind's in your favor, and they don't say if this includes stopping off getting resources, because your boat takes like small amounts of damage when it's out at sea. So that's, I assume that's not adding having to stop, get resources, repair your boat, and stuff like that. Yeah, keep in mind that we've got a bunch of systems to approximate how rough the journeys might be in real life. So things decay faster, your food consumption gets higher, stuff like that. You can't just set sail and make a beeline for exactly where you want to go. Jeremy mentioned weather events earlier. You also have some sorts of perils at sea, like the army, the damned ships are roaming about. Those are AIs that are going to seek you out, and you also have to worry about other players, not to mention the occasional aggressive sea life we have. Obviously there are sharks, but there are also gigantic angry whales and some giant squids and other things. You really never know what you're going to find out there, and that also depends on where you are in the world. Which is nice. There'll be different sea life in different parts of the world. Tons of PvE and PvP possible encounters out at the sea, so you have to be ready. There are systems to make it viable for smaller groups of players to manage a far-flung empire. We have fast travel, so if you have outposts spread all over the large world, you'll be able to fast travel just your actual character, nothing that you carry on you. Of course, servers can turn that off as an option because the game supports player-hosted servers, so everything's configurable. If someone wants a more hardcore experience, they certainly could disable that. So basically, this is saying you can fast travel, and I'm wondering. So in Ark, they had fast travel bed to bed, and you drop everything off you when you fast traveled. I'm wondering if this is you can actually just fast travel to bases and still drop stuff where you were. So this is also saying if you have a bunch of different bases across the map, say if you have one base on one side of the map, one base on the other, take you like 30+ hours to get there. If you own those bases, or if you're in a company with those bases, you could drop all your stuff off in storage and stuff at that base, fast travel to the other one, now you're on the other side of the island if you need to do that, and have, you know, different materials on each and resources at each. How do you make traveling and fighting on ships fun for everyone on board? We've tried to give players things to do while they're traveling. It's not just sitting there waiting. In addition to operating the ship, we've got a cool music system where you can form bands and play songs together to give you stat buffs. We've got fun dances for people to gauge it as well. You have an AI crew you can assign a bunch of jobs to, and the captain of the ship can delegate one or more of those lieutenants who direct the AI to do things like operate the cannons or turn the sails. It's pretty cool. So buffs from playing music together, dances, which are probably just basically like emo dances, stuff like that, and then crew assignment, which you already know kind of about that. You forgot the big one. You can even tell an AI crew member to take the wheel and navigate. That lets you put the boat on autopilot, which is a super good feature. I don't think we ever got confirmation that that was a full feature before, that the NPCs could pilot your boat. That's massive, especially how big this world's going to be. That's massive to be able to be like, I'm going to go AFK, or I'm going to watch Netflix on the other monitor, if you have two monitors, and I'm going to have an AI crew member, you know, sail the boat. That's massive. That does put the boat on autopilot. You don't have to sit there and steal the whole time. That's pretty important. There are also a couple of wayfinding things you can do. The Sextant is a mini game that allows you to unlock some helpful HUD stuff that tells you what direction you're going. We also have discovery zones. There's at least 1,000 of them in the game at launch. If you're up in the crow's nest, you'll get indicators about where they are on the horizon. That's two really cool effects. The minigame on the Sextant, not Sextant, and being up in the crow's nest actually gives you like notifications of different areas around you. You can fish. Oh, there's fishing, of course. You can search for shipwrecks, which is quite interesting. Whether a ship goes down, it goes to the bottom of the sea, so there always might be some resource down there waiting to be harvested. We have a diving system as well. There are plenty of interesting things to do when you're not in combat. And when you are in combat, it really boils down to whatever the heck you want that's physically possible. You can grab onto the enemy ship. If it's going slow enough, you can try to swim up to it and climb on. If you're really clever and sneaky, you can bail out the water on your ship using a bucket. When you start sinking, you can put out fires using a bucket. You can take control of any one cannon yourself, or you can be a captain and fire all the guns. It takes about 5 to 6 people to optimally handle a ship. That said, 2 people can do it no problem. Honestly, 6 people who aren't working as a team are going to be less effective than 2 people who really know their stuff. 1 person can actually do everything except for repairing. Mutinies sound exciting. How do they work? They're pretty basic right now, actually. If the crew hasn't been paid for long enough, first they just stop following your orders and they tell you with a HUD message, I need to be paid that much money. That's telling you have to pay me before a mutiny. I think in real life they probably don't telegraph their intentions so obviously, but we felt we really needed to make it clear to the player. Mutiny crew will start attacking you, and non-mutiny crew, though a lot of times the way the payment cycle works, multiple crew members will meet at the same time. You tend to see instant crew battles. In practice, it's just a penumbrum. You don't want it to happen. You've got an aging system. Can your characters die of old age? What happens then? That's kind of almost a stub right now. You might say there's a real-time aging. You do start at the age of 20 and you can go up to 100. It does affect your visuals. You'll go all wrinkly and your hair turns white. When you say real-time aging, I mean it's happening whether you're playing or not. So even if you're not logged in, your character is getting old. It's not actually going to take 100 years. I believe we had it set to take about 3 months to go through the entire aging cycle, and it's just an aesthetic change right now, but a very amusing one. Mind you, in the future it will affect statistical debuffs and buffs as you get older. We also want you to die. If you reach 100, however, there will always be ways to cheat death. There's fountains of youth randomly appearing for days at a time. Okay, so that definitely tells us a lot more about the Fountain of Youth that we haven't known about before. So they appear for days at a time. So that means that maybe it's going to be one and it's only going to be up for a few days, and then maybe one will be down for a few days, something like that. They're in one place and poof, they vanish and they're somewhere else, so players don't gather in one place. It'll be like, hey, where's a Fountain of Youth this week kind of a thing, and players will have to travel all over the world. Maybe that will lead to some interesting conflicts. We may also have some creatures that guard them. Very cool systems around the aging and the Fountain of Youth we have there. We also have heirs. We're going to allow players to mate and raise children. When those children are of age, a player will be able to transfer their control to the child. The child will have the stats of parents plus additional stats to incentivize multi-generational gameplay. Okay, so that's something very important that we didn't know as well. The fact that breeding children and then becoming those children, which will be a system in the game, actually gives buffs. So multi-generational gameplay and having multi-generations where you keep having children and keep becoming them is pretty important for getting more buffs. We want the game to not feel like it's frozen in ember. We want players to feel like there's a history and a lineage, to see their family trees in the game. Some of these systems exist in ARC in rough form, and we're fleshing them out and making them more human for what we want to do with Atlas. The mating stuff isn't an early access launch, but we do plan to add it later, hopefully before people die of old age. Last question, can you ride your pets? Absolutely. And that's the end. So tons of information there, tons of new information, tons of really good stuff, a ton of super exciting stuff as well that we just read through. But anyways, that's the end of the article. After this video, my next video will be of in-game stuff, since it comes out in like 3 hours. Hopefully I'll be having tons of videos out super quickly, so keep an eye out for that. Subscribe if you want to see more Atlas stuff. I'll be coming out with videos as soon as possible when we can get in game. Leave a comment down below what you think about all this new information, the new screenshots, all that type of stuff. Subscribe if you want to see more, which I already said, and thanks for watching.